History has a habit, a very human habit. It prefers endings. Endings are tidy. They come with dates, ruins, silence, and a satisfying sense that something has been completed. Cities fall, forests reclaim stone, civilization fades into mystery. We nod, take notes, and move on. The story feels finished even if we don't fully understand it. Beginnings, on the other hand, are inconvenient. Beginnings are messy. They don't announce themselves. They don't come with monuments labeled, "This is the start." They arrive quietly, spread unevenly, and often look like nothing important at all. A path that goes nowhere. A gathering that doesn't repeat. A structure so large, so gradual, that it disguises itself as part of the landscape. So when it comes to the Maya, history did what it usually does. It stared hard at the end. For decades, the story was told backward. Scholars traced the collapse, the abandoned cities, the vines creeping over stone staircases, the unanswered question of why people left. We became very good at describing how the Maya disappeared into the forest, and far less interested in asking how they ever came out of it. The question, "Where did the Maya begin?" sounds simple, almost naive, the kind of question that feels too basic to ask in a lecture hall, and yet it lingered, uncomfortable, unanswered, quietly avoided. Because the truth is, beginnings rarely look like civilizations. They don't look like kings. They don't look like writing. They don't look like power. They look like work, and work is easy to ignore. Especially when it takes centuries, especially when it leaves no clear signature, especially when it spreads itself so evenly across the land that even trained eyes mistake it for nature doing what nature has always done. We tend to imagine ancient civilizations as obsessed with permanence, with monuments meant to last forever. Yet one of the most important early chapters of Maya history hid itself by becoming too permanent, too integrated, too ordinary. It didn't rise above the forest. It became the ground beneath it. And so history walked over it. Farmers plowed it. Cattle grazed it. Researchers passed nearby and saw nothing worth stopping for. Not because the evidence wasn't there, but because it didn't behave the way history expected it to. History likes its clues dramatic. This one was patient. Only recently did someone stop and ask the wrong question in the right place. Not, why did the Maya fall? But what if they didn't start the way we thought? The answer, it turns out, was not hidden in a tomb or carved into stone. It was spread out, wide, flat, quiet, waiting for someone to notice that the landscape itself had been shaped by human hands long before anyone called themselves Maya. Tonight, we are not following the end of a civilization. We are stepping back into the moment before it knew its own name, and we are beginning exactly where history once looked away. Chapter 1. A place so big, it pretended to be nature. There are places that announce themselves. They rise, they interrupt the horizon, they demand to be seen, and then there are places that do the opposite. Aguada Fénix did not rise. It waited. For centuries, people walked across it without realizing they were walking on anything at all. Farmers planted crops on its broad surface. Paths crossed it casually. Livestock wandered back and forth. The land behaved exactly as land should behave. Flat, quiet, useful, no sharp angles, no dramatic silhouettes, nothing to suggest intention. It blended in by being enormous. This is the part that feels slightly unfair to the human mind. We are trained, almost conditioned, to to associate size with visibility. If something is big, we assume it must be obvious. If something is important, we expect it to stand apart. Aguada Fénix refused both expectations. It didn't stand above the landscape. It became the landscape. From ground level, there was no moment of revelation, no clear edge where nature stopped and architecture began. Just a gentle rise, a long slope, a sense that the earth here was perhaps a little higher than elsewhere. Enough to notice, not enough to question. And so no one did. In hindsight, this feels almost humorous. The largest ancient structure ever identified in the Maya region spent millennia passing as nothing more than slightly ambitious terrain. History, it turns out, can miss things. Not because they are hidden, but because they are too familiar. There is something quietly unsettling about that. We like to imagine ancient builders carving their presence into the world, forcing the future to remember them. Aguada Fénix suggests a different approach. Instead of carving out from nature, its builders added to it. Layer after layer of earth, shaped so gradually that time itself helped smooth the seams. It wasn't camouflage. It was patience. And patience works remarkably well against suspicion. When researchers first moved through the area, they saw what generations before them had seen: farmland, trees, subtle changes in elevation. The idea that an immense, artificial platform lay beneath their feet felt, frankly, improbable. You're not supposed to have something like that in a tropical forest, at least not without it making a fuss. But Aguada Fénix never made a fuss. It did not announce itself with stone walls or towering pyramids. It offered no dramatic skyline. It required no explanation because it never asked for attention. People assumed the ground was the ground. After all, that's usually a safe assumption. Usually. The irony is that the structure was not hidden by secrecy or loss of knowledge. It was hidden by usefulness. Once its ceremonial purpose faded, the platform continued to function perfectly well as land. Good land. Stable land. Land that did not collapse or erode in any alarming way. In other words, land that did its job. And so it remained. This raises an uncomfortable question, one that lingers quietly beneath the story. How many other things have we mistaken for nature simply because they behaved too well to attract curiosity? How many human efforts have dissolved so completely into their surroundings that we stopped recognizing them as efforts at all? Aguada Fénix suggests that invisibility is not always the result of decay. Sometimes it is the result of success. The builders shaped Earth in such a controlled, consistent manner that the platform aged gracefully. It did not crack. It did not tilt. It did not demand repairs that might have drawn attention. It stayed flat. It stayed broad. It stayed quiet. In a way, it mastered the art of being overlooked. There is a faintly amusing lesson buried here, one that history does not often teach directly. If you want to avoid suspicion, don't make yourself small. Make yourself vast. Spread yourself thin. Become so normal that questioning you feels unnecessary. Eventually, someone will stand at the edge of it and feel a strange discomfort they can't quite name. A sense that the land is too even, too deliberate, too calm. But until then, the place remains what it has always pretended to be. Just ground. And that, perhaps, is the most unsettling part of all. Chapter 2. The Machine That Could See Through Trees. For a very long time, the forest was convincing. Not dramatic, not hostile, just convincing enough to be believed. Thick canopies swallowed light. Roots stitched themselves over old ground. Leaves fell, rotted, and fell again. From above, everything looked green. From below, everything felt ordinary. Whatever lay beneath had learned the oldest survival trick of all: remain quiet long enough, and people will stop asking questions. Then LiDAR arrived, not as a revelation, not with fanfare, but as a tool, cold, patient, and deeply uninterested in appearances. LiDAR does not care about legends. It does not admire ruins. It does not respect assumptions. It sends pulses of light from the sky, thousands per second, and waits to see what comes back. Most of those pulses hit leaves. Some hit branches. A few slip through gaps so small no human eye would bother with them. And those few are enough. What returned from the forest floor was not a story, but a shape. Straight lines, right angles, ratios that made no sense if the land had truly been left alone. For the first time, researchers were not walking through the landscape. They were looking at it, stripped of trees, stripped of illusion, reduced to geometry. And geometry is an unforgiving language. It does not negotiate. It does not improvise. Nature curves. Nature wanders. Nature rarely commits to rectangles of that scale. This was the moment the ground betrayed itself. On the LiDAR maps, the forest vanished, and something else appeared in its place. A massive, raised form with edges too regular to excuse, too symmetrical to ignore. It did not spike upward like a pyramid. It stretched outward calmly, confidently, as if it had never doubted that someone would eventually notice. From the air, it was undeniable. From the ground, it had been invisible. This contrast is unsettling in a quiet way. It forces an uncomfortable realization. The past did not disappear. We simply lacked the equipment to recognize it. For decades, centuries even, archaeologists worked under the assumption that if something monumental existed, it would announce itself. Stone would rise, structures would stand apart, evidence would be vertical. But Aguada Fénix was horizontal. It did not rise to meet the eye. It waited for the eye to change. LiDAR did not uncover history. It corrected vision. This distinction matters more than it seems. Technology did not rewrite the past. It did not invent a civilization where none existed. It simply removed the filter that had been quietly distorting our view. The forest had acted as a mask, and LiDAR lifted it without ceremony. Suddenly the question was no longer, is there something here? It became, how did we miss something this large? The answer, inconvenient as it is, has very little to do with intelligence and everything to do with expectation. Humans are excellent at seeing what they are prepared to see. We recognize pyramids because we expect pyramids. We spot walls because walls behave like walls. A structure that behaves like land, however, falls into a blind spot. LiDAR thrives in that blind spot. It ignores texture and color. It does not care if the surface is green, brown, cultivated, or wild. It measures distance, height, angle, pattern. And once those measurements were assembled, the illusion collapsed quietly. What looked like rolling terrain was revealed as intention. What felt natural was shown to be designed. What seemed accidental resolved into proportion. There is a faint irony here, almost gentle in its humor. For years, scholars debated why early Maya societies appeared to lack monumental architecture. The answer, it turns out, was not that they didn't build big, It was that they built so broadly, so evenly, that monumentality disguised itself as geography. LiDAR did not expose a secret because the secret was hidden. It exposed a secret because it was obvious in the wrong way. This changes how we think about discovery. It suggests that history is not always buried deeper, it is sometimes spread wider, and that the limits of knowledge are often less about missing data than mismatched tools. The people who built Aguada Fénix were never invisible. Their work was never erased. It was simply misunderstood, resting in plain sight beneath the assumption that land is just land. LiDAR offered a new pair of eyes, nothing more. But that was enough. Not because the past had changed, but because we finally learned how to look without expecting it to perform. And once we did, the forest could no longer pretend. Chapter 3. The largest thing nobody meant to find. There is a particular moment in research when numbers stop being informative and start becoming unsettling. At first, they look harmless. A measurement here, a dimension there, a few figures written down carefully, almost politely, as if they are asking permission to be believed. Then they begin to accumulate. A length of roughly 1.5 kilometers, a width approaching 400 meters, an area so broad that the eye, when standing at one edge, struggles to register the other. At that point, the mind does something curious. It pauses, it recalculates, it looks for a familiar comparison, anything to anchor the scale to ordinary experience. So the comparisons arrive, slightly embarrassed, like metaphors that know they are outmatched. More than 85 football fields, a volume greater than the Great Pyramid of Giza. And suddenly, the numbers stop feeling educational and start feeling accusatory. Because no one was looking for this. Not here, not like this, not on the ground itself. Aguada Fénix does not behave like a monument. It does not rise sharply into the sky. It does not dominate the horizon. It spreads, calmly, deliberately, as if size alone, when applied horizontally, could escape attention indefinitely, which, for a very long time, it did. This is where the story becomes faintly ironic. Archaeology, as a discipline, has trained itself to search for the spectacular. Tall pyramids, imposing temples, structures that announce intention through height. The assumption, rarely stated but widely shared, was that monumentality announces itself vertically. Aguada Fénix ignored that rule completely. Instead of reaching upward, it reached outward. It invested its effort not in being seen from afar, but in occupying space so thoroughly that questioning it felt unnecessary. Standing on top of it, one would not feel awe. One would feel grounded. And perhaps that was the point. When researchers finally understood what they were measuring, disbelief arrived quietly. No dramatic gasps, no triumphant declarations, just a slow realization that something enormous had been present all along, and that everyone, including professionals, trained to notice such things, had walked past it without stopping. If this was a mistake, it was a remarkably labor-intensive one. 4 million cubic meters of earth. Moved without wheels, moved without beasts of burden, moved by human hands over generations. This was not an accidental pile of dirt. It was not erosion behaving strangely. It was not nature indulging in geometry. This was intention made patient, and that patience matters. Because size, when stretched across time, becomes easy to misinterpret, a structure built in a single generation tends to feel aggressive, even arrogant. A structure built slowly, layer by layer, season by season, blends into the rhythms of life. It becomes familiar before it becomes remarkable. The people who built Aguada Fénix did not wake up one morning to construct the largest platform in the Maya region. They participated in a process that outlived them. Each contribution was modest, each layer reasonable. The enormity only reveals itself when centuries are compressed into a single glance. This challenges a comfortable narrative about ancient ambition. We often imagine monumental construction as a statement of power, a declaration meant to intimidate the present and impress the future. Aguada Fénix offers a quieter alternative. It suggests that scale does not always come from authority. Sometimes it comes from persistence. The platform's vastness is not aggressive. It does not threaten the sky. It occupies the earth with calm confidence, as if assuming that space, once claimed slowly enough, will never be questioned. There is something almost humorous in how long it succeeded. For years, discussions about early Maya society revolved around what they lacked. No early kings, no towering stone monuments, no obvious signs of centralized power. And yet, beneath those assumptions lay a structure that dwarfed many later achievements, not in height, but in sheer commitment. The joke, if there is one, is gentle and slightly uncomfortable. While everyone was waiting for something dramatic to appear, the most dramatic thing imaginable was already finished. It simply did not behave the way drama usually does. Standing before the data, researchers were forced to adjust their instincts. Monumentality, it turns out, does not require spectacle. It requires coordination, time, shared purpose, and a willingness to build something so large that no single person can take credit for it. Aguada Fénix is not impressive because it dominates the skyline. It is impressive because it refuses to. It sits there broad and unassuming, quietly daring the future to notice. And when the future finally does, it offers no explanation, only scale, measured calmly, recorded carefully, and left to sink in at its own pace. After all, if this was ever meant to be found easily, it would have behaved very differently. Instead, it waited. And that waiting may be its most extraordinary feature of all. Chapter 4. Dating the Undatable. Some things refuse to tell you how old they are. They leave no signature. They offer no inscription. They do not carve their birthdays into stone. Aguada Fénix was one of those things. There were no glyphs pressed into walls, no stelae standing upright, politely announcing a year or a ruler or a proud beginning. No written record waiting patiently for someone to read it. The platform simply existed, broad and silent, as if age were an unnecessary detail. For archaeologists, this is an uncomfortable situation. History prefers dates. Timelines behave better when they can be pinned down. Without a clear sense of when, even the most impressive structure becomes difficult to place, like a sentence without a verb. So the usual questions stalled. When was it built? Who built it? And perhaps most troubling of all, how early was early? The answers were not carved into stone because stone was never asked to speak. Instead, the clues lay buried deep within the body of the platform itself, mixed casually into the earth, unremarkable and easy to overlook. Charcoal, burned fragments of organic material, the quiet leftovers of fire, crushed into soil and sealed beneath layers of human effort. Not ceremonial objects, not treasures, just the residue of daily activity, fires lit, work done, days passed. It is almost disappointing in a way. After all this scale, all this labor, all this mystery, the key to understanding time turned out to be something small enough to fit between two fingers. And yet, this is often how history works. Charcoal has a peculiar advantage. It remembers. Within its structure, radioactive carbon decays at a steady, predictable pace. Measure what remains, and time, otherwise invisible, reveals itself reluctantly. When samples from deep inside Aguada Fénix were analyzed, the results arrived without drama. No sudden revelations, no cinematic pause, just numbers, calm and precise, and those numbers were unsettling. Construction began around 1100 BCE. It continued in phases until roughly 800 BCE. Quietly, gently, the entire timeline shifted. This was not a minor adjustment. It was not a matter of a few decades or even a century. These dates pushed the existence of large-scale construction in the Maya region far earlier than most long-held assumptions allowed. For years, the dominant idea had been reassuringly orderly. Small villages first, gradual development, increasing complexity, and only later, much later, monumental architecture. Civilization, we were told, grew politely, step by step. Aguada Fénix did not follow that script. It appeared early, it appeared large, and it appeared before many of the features we like to use as markers of civilization were fully in place. The shock, if it can be called that, was subtle. It did not overturn the table. It simply slid it several centuries backward and waited to see if anyone would notice. There is something almost poetic about this reversal. A civilization long defined by its sophisticated calendars and intricate timekeeping had its origins revealed, not through writing, but through the remnants of ordinary fire. The beginning of a complex society dated by the ashes of daily life. No proclamations, no declarations of intent, just evidence. And that evidence forced a reconsideration of what comes first. Did organized society enable monumental construction? Or did monumental construction force people to organize themselves? The dates offered no opinion. They simply existed, stubborn and precise, leaving interpretation to those who had to adjust their theories accordingly. What became clear was this: Aguada Fénix was not the result of a mature civilization expressing itself. It was part of the process that created one. A long experiment in cooperation, repeated over generations, before anyone thought to write about it. All of this revealed by charcoal, a substance usually associated with what has already burned away. In this case, it did the opposite. It preserved the moment when something was just beginning. A small fragment quietly altering centuries of certainty. One might say it gently corrected history. Or more accurately, history corrected itself. Once it finally listened to the smallest voice in the ground. Chapter 5. 200 Years of Carrying Dirt. If there had been an ancient version of a marathon, this would not have been it. Marathons end, this did not. For nearly 200 years, Aguada Fénix grew the slowest way possible. There were no wheels rolling into place, no animals harnessed to lighten the load, no clever shortcuts waiting to be discovered. There was only soil, hands, and time, applied again and again until effort became landscape. It is tempting to imagine ancient construction as a series of dramatic moments, a command given, a workforce assembled, a monument rising quickly into view. Aguada Fénix refuses that image. Nothing about it suggests urgency. Nothing about it implies spectacle. Its scale emerged not from intensity, but from repetition. A basket filled, a load carried, earth poured, and then done again, day after day, season after season, generation after generation. The numbers are calm, but they linger. Roughly 4 million cubic meters of earth had to be moved. When calculated carefully, that effort translates into millions of workdays, somewhere between 10 and 13 million, spread across nearly 2 centuries. No single person ever saw the beginning and the end. No one stood back and admired the finished form. For most participants, the project existed only as a task, a place, a routine. That is what makes it unsettling, in a quiet way. We often attribute large ancient constructions to power, kings, elites, centralized authority forcing labor into motion, but at Aguada Fénix, there is no clear evidence of such figures directing the work. No palaces nearby, no royal tombs, no symbols of command towering above the rest, just people showing up and doing what needed to be done, which raises an uncomfortable possibility. Perhaps no one was forced. Without carts or animals, every load of soil had to be lifted by a human body. The weight was felt. The distance was known. The effort was personal. And yet the work continued, not in a frantic burst, but in a steady rhythm that suggests something closer to obligation than coercion, or perhaps something closer to habit. It is easy to underestimate what habit can build. The earth used to construct Aguada Fénix was taken from nearby pits, leaving subtle scars around the platform, small absences that fed a much larger presence. The soil moved only short distances, but it moved consistently. A little here, a little there. Over time, the accumulation became undeniable. What looks monumental now likely felt modest then. No one woke up one morning intending to move millions of cubic meters of dirt. They moved what they could. They returned when it was time. They worked within the limits of daylight, weather, and muscle. The project adapted to human endurance rather than demanding heroics. This is where the faint humor enters, gentle and persistent. If you wanted to design a system that avoided exhaustion, avoided rebellion, avoided collapse, this would be it. No sprint, no finish line, just a task that folded itself into life so thoroughly that it became normal. If there was an ancient marathon here, it did not require cheering crowds or dramatic starts. It required patience and a remarkable tolerance for continuity. And continuity, as it turns out, is a form of strength. The platform did not rise quickly, but it never stopped rising. Each layer sealed the previous one. Each generation added what it could, trusting that the work mattered even if its purpose was not fully visible. That trust is difficult to manufacture through authority alone. It suggests shared understanding rather than imposed command. Perhaps people came for ceremonies. Perhaps they came for seasons. Perhaps they came because others were coming too. Whatever the reason, the effect was the same. Cooperation persisted long enough to become structure. This reframes how we think about collective effort in the ancient world. Strength here is not measured in the weight one person can lift, but in the willingness of many people to lift manageable weight repeatedly. It is not dramatic power, but quiet reliability. Aguada Fénix stands, or rather, lies, as evidence of that principle. It is not a monument to force, it is a monument to showing up. There is something almost modern about this realization, which makes it slightly uncomfortable. We tend to place ancient societies safely at a distance, imagining them driven by impulses unfamiliar to us. But this project feels oddly recognizable. The slow accumulation, the absence of a final reveal, the sense that the work matters even when its outcome is abstract. It suggests that civilization does not always begin with ambition. Sometimes it begins with endurance. 200 years of carrying dirt may not sound impressive at first. It lacks drama, it lacks speed, it lacks heroes. And yet, when compressed into a single moment, it reshapes the land itself. Perhaps that is the deeper lesson embedded here, beneath the layers of soil. Not that humans are capable of extraordinary feats in short bursts, but that they are capable of sustaining ordinary effort long enough to change the world. No wheels, no beasts, no shortcuts, just people, earth, and time, moving together slowly until something permanent quietly takes shape. Chapter 6. The colored cells beneath the surface. At first glance, the ground looked ordinary, flat, stable, quiet. Nothing about Aguada Fénix suggested complexity once the upper layers were in place. No patterns visible, no markings, no clues left behind for future curiosity. Just Earth, packed carefully, doing exactly what Earth is expected to do. But beneath that calm surface, something unexpected waited. When archaeologists began digging deeper, carefully, methodically, they did not find chaos. They did not find random dumping or hurried construction. Instead, they found order, repetition, a system so deliberate it felt almost personal. Thousands upon thousands of cells, each one small, each one contained, each one filled with soil of a distinct color: green, red, black, blue, not blended, not mixed, separated with care. These were not accidents of geology, they were decisions. The cells measured only 1 meter or 2 across, shallow enough to seem insignificant on their own. But together they formed a vast internal grid, tens of thousands of individual compartments, each one filled by hand, each one assigned, each one completed with intention. It is tempting to imagine this as decoration, as if the builders wanted to create something visually striking beneath the surface. But that temptation quickly dissolves when you remember one crucial detail. No one was meant to see it. Once the cells were filled, once the colors were arranged and sealed into place, the entire pattern was covered. A thick layer of white earth smoothed everything over, erasing every trace of variation. The checkerboard vanished. The ground returned to uniformity, which raises an unsettling question. Why go to such trouble for something that would be hidden forever? The answer is not obvious, and that is precisely what gives it weight. Each cell appears to represent a group of people, a unit of contribution, one group, one space, one color. The boundaries between them were carefully maintained, even reinforced with stone dividers to prevent mixing. This was not about efficiency. It was about recognition, at least during the act itself. Every group knew where their work began and ended. And then, just as deliberately, that distinction was buried. This suggests a mindset very different from later monumental traditions where builders sought visibility, legacy, and individual credit. Here, identity mattered during participation, but not afterward. The process held meaning. The result did not need to advertise it. What mattered was not what they left behind. It was what they understood while building. That understanding did not require permanence. The colored cells reveal a society deeply aware of coordination. People were not working blindly into a common mass. They were assigned space. They had autonomy within limits. They could choose how to fill their cell, which soil to use, how to contribute. And yet, no cell dominated another. No color rose above the rest. In the end, everything became equal. The white layer did not erase effort. It unified it. There is something quietly unsettling about this choice. Modern instincts push us toward visibility. We want work to be seen, credited, remembered. We carve names into stone. We document progress obsessively. We fear being forgotten. The builders of Aguada Fénix did the opposite. They created difference and then deliberately hid it. This was not ignorance, it was restraint. The act of covering the cells transformed thousands of individual contributions into a single shared body. The platform no longer belonged to any group. It belonged to everyone, or perhaps to no one at all. That decision speaks volumes. It suggests that the meaning of the structure did not lie in its final appearance, but in the shared knowledge that went into making it. Knowledge of cooperation, knowledge of boundaries, knowledge of how to act together without needing to leave permanent proof. Once that knowledge was established, the colors no longer mattered. There is a faint chill in realizing this. These people invested enormous effort into something they did not intend to display. They valued participation over display, coordination over recognition. The most intricate part of the structure was never meant to survive in visible form, and yet it survived anyway, quietly, beneath layers of time, waiting for someone to notice that uniformity often hides stories far more complex than ornament ever could. This discovery forces us to rethink what complexity looks like. It is not always ornate. It is not always visible. Sometimes it is systematic. Sometimes it is procedural. Sometimes it exists only during the moment of doing. The colored cells beneath Aguada Fénix were not a message to the future. They were a message to the present of the builders themselves. A reminder that everyone had a place, a role, a boundary, and a responsibility. Once that message was delivered, it was no longer needed. So they covered it, not out of neglect, not out of forgetfulness, but out of understanding. The ground above remained smooth and quiet. People walked on it for centuries without knowing what lay beneath. That ignorance was not a failure of preservation. It was part of the design. The most important thing was never meant to be seen. It was meant to be known only by those who built it together and then agreed to let it disappear. Chapter 7. A calendar before a civilization. Before names settled into place, before identities hardened into something recognizable, there was already a rhythm, not a belief, not a doctrine, just a pattern in the sky that returned often enough to be trusted. At Aguada Fénix, this rhythm took shape quietly, not in writing, not in stone inscriptions meant to impress, but in alignment, in the careful placement of earth and mounds arranged to notice something simple and unavoidable. The sun moves, and it does so reliably. The arrangement discovered here is known today as an E group, a configuration that allows observers to track where the sun rises across the horizon throughout the year. From one position, the shifting points of sunrise can be measured, marked, remembered. No numbers carved, no words required. Just repeated observation, season after season. This was not about prediction in the dramatic sense. It was about recognition. If the sun rises here today, then something is about to change. If it rises there, then it is time to prepare. If it reaches that point again, then the cycle has completed itself. What matters is not precision for its own sake, but consistency. And consistency is the foundation of planning. Long before the Maya became known for complex calendars, there was already an understanding that time could be divided, counted, and returned to. The 260-day cycle, so central later on, appears here not as an abstract system, but as a lived pattern, a way of organizing effort around planting, harvesting, gathering, and resting. This was time as a tool. Agriculture does not wait for inspiration. It responds to seasons. Miss the window, and the land reminds you. Arrive too early, and the ground refuses to cooperate. Arrive too late, and the yield shrinks quietly without explanation. So people watched the sun. They did not worship it here. They measured it. They treated it as a reference point, something stable enough to build life around. The E group is not ornate. It does not dominate the landscape. It aligns just enough to do its job, then steps back. And that restraint is important. This was not a civilization announcing itself. This was a community learning how to stay in sync with the year. The calendar did not define who they were. It defined when to act. Before identity, there was timing. The sun's movement divided the year into intervals that mattered. When rains would arrive, when fields should be prepared, when people would gather, the cycle did not require explanation. It repeated itself until it became familiar, and familiarity turned into trust. Trust is what allows coordination. When many people rely on the same timing, cooperation becomes easier. You do not need orders if everyone agrees on the moment. You do not need hierarchy if the schedule is shared. Time itself becomes the organizing principle. This is what makes the discovery so quietly powerful. The E group at Aguada Fénix suggests that temporal order came before social labels. People did not first decide who they were and then invent a calendar. They learned how to keep time together, and identity followed later. Before we know who we are, the structure seems to say, we should know what day it is. There is something almost modern in that logic. We often imagine early societies as driven primarily by myth or authority, but here the driving force appears to be practicality. The sun was not a symbol to interpret, it was a signal to respond to. The calendar was not an abstract system, it was a shared agreement with the environment. This approach leaves little trace. No grand monuments, no proclamations, just alignment and repetition. Yet its impact is profound. Once people begin to organize life around a shared cycle, gatherings become predictable, work becomes coordinated. Large projects become possible, not because someone commands them, but because time itself invites participation. If you know when others will arrive, you can build together. The E group is evidence of this quiet shift. It marks the moment when observation turned into structure, when repetition turned into expectation. Not a civilization yet, but a framework capable of supporting one. And perhaps that is why it feels unsettling in retrospect. We want civilizations to begin with declarations, with leaders, with defining moments. Aguada Fénix suggests something far less dramatic. It suggests that civilization begins when people agree to look at the same thing at the same time, often enough that it shapes how they live. The calendar did not demand loyalty. It did not ask for belief. It only required attention. And attention, sustained over generations, proved sufficient. By the time names emerged and identities formed, the rhythm was already in place. The days had been counted long before anyone thought to write them down. The sun rose. People noticed. Life adjusted. That was enough. A calendar existed before a civilization knew what to call itself. And in that quiet order of days, the groundwork for everything that followed was already being laid, one sunrise at a time. Chapter 8: People Who Came but Didn't Stay. Aguada Fénix was never meant to be lived in. That realization arrives slowly, the way many uncomfortable truths do, without drama, without a single decisive clue. There are no dense neighborhoods here, no tight clusters of houses, no evidence of daily domestic life repeating year after year in the same place. No city breathing through generations. And yet people were here. In large numbers, they arrived, they gathered, they worked, they observed the sun, they carried earth, they shared time, and then quietly they left again. Aguada Fénix was not a destination for permanence. It was a destination for return. This distinction matters more than it first appears. Cities are designed to hold people. They compress life into walls and streets and routines. Gathering places do something else. They create moments. Intervals where dispersed lives briefly overlap before spreading out again. Aguada Fénix seems to belong firmly to the second category. Archaeological evidence suggests movement rather than settlement. People likely came from different regions, following seasonal rhythms rather than permanent residence. Some may have arrived for agricultural cycles, others for shared labor, others still for observation, coordination, or ceremony tied to time and landscape. No one appears to have stayed long enough to claim ownership, and that may have been exactly the point. There is something faintly humorous in this arrangement, if you allow yourself to notice it. Imagine a place so important that thousands of people travel to reach it, yet no one bothers to move in. No permanent addresses, no lasting footprints of domestic comfort. Just arrivals and departures over and over again. No one lived here, one might say, but everyone showed up. The platform itself supports this idea. Its vast open space is ideal for gathering large groups. Its ramps allow easy access. Its layout invites movement rather than enclosure. This is not architecture designed to confine. It is architecture designed to accommodate flow. People came when the timing was right. They likely arrived knowing others would be there too. Shared calendars, shared cycles, shared expectations made coordination possible without centralized control. You didn't need to summon people if everyone already knew when to come. Time did the inviting. Some participants may have been highly mobile, moving across regions with the seasons. Others may have returned repeatedly year after year, becoming familiar faces without ever becoming residents. Specialists, those skilled in observation, organization, or coordination, may have stayed slightly longer but not long enough to turn the place into a town. This pattern creates a subtle but powerful social dynamic. When no one owns the space, no one dominates it. Authority becomes temporary. Influence becomes situational. The place belongs to the moment, not to a ruling group. It is a system that resists hierarchy, almost by accident. There are no elite compounds here, no palatial structures overlooking the rest, no clear markers separating those who command from those who follow. Instead, there is openness, wide, deliberate, and difficult to control. And that openness changes behavior. People who know they will leave behave differently than those who plan to stay. They invest in the shared task rather than private accumulation. They contribute without expecting permanence. They participate without carving their names into the ground. The archaeological record reflects this restraint. What remains are traces of activity, not of ownership. Evidence of effort, not of control. This is what makes Aguada Fénix quietly unsettling. It challenges a deeply ingrained assumption that important places must also be inhabited places. That significance requires residence. That power demands permanence. Here, significance traveled. People came, did what needed to be done, and returned to their own regions carrying something less tangible than goods or monuments. They carried shared knowledge of timing, coordination, cooperation. They carried experience, and that experience did not stay put. In this sense, Aguada Fénix functioned less like a city and more like a node, a meeting point in a network that extended far beyond its physical boundaries. Ideas moved through it. Practices passed through it. People crossed paths, exchanged rhythms, and then dispersed again. Civilization, it seems, did not gather itself into one place at first. It circulated. There is a gentle irony here. Modern imagination often equates progress with settlement, with walls, permanence, fixed addresses. But this early phase suggests that movement itself was productive, that not staying allowed something larger to emerge. No one lived here long, the evidence suggests, but everyone who mattered came. Aguada Fénix was not a home. It was a rendezvous. And in that steady coming and going, something essential took shape. Not in buildings meant to last, but in habits meant to travel. People arrived as individuals from different places. They left as participants in a shared system. They did not stay, but what they carried with them would. Chapter 9. No kings, no thrones, just work. At some point in every discussion about ancient monuments, an assumption quietly takes over. There must have been a ruler, a king, a council. Someone standing above the rest, pointing, commanding, deciding who worked and who did not. Monumental scale, we are told, requires monumental authority. People do not move mountains unless someone powerful tells them to. Aguada Fénix complicates that story. Because here the usual signs are missing. There are no colossal stone heads staring into the distance, no carved faces meant to be remembered, no palaces rising above the work, no clear center from which orders would have flowed outward. Compared to the nearby Olmec world, where rulers were immortalized in massive stone portraits, this absence is striking, almost suspicious. The Olmec left no doubt about who mattered. Their leaders were carved in basalt, hauled across long distances, and placed where everyone could see them. Power had a face, authority had weight. The social hierarchy was unmistakable. Aguada Fénix offers something else entirely. Here, the most complete stone sculpture discovered is not a ruler at all. It is an animal, a white-lipped peccary, rendered with quiet attention, naturalistic rather than grand. No crown, no symbols of command, just a creature that belonged to the landscape as much as the people did. This choice is telling. It suggests a society uninterested in placing human authority above everything else, or perhaps a society that had not yet decided to do so. The emphasis is not on who led, but on what was done, and what was done was immense. The platform did not build itself. Millions of cubic meters of earth do not move through good intentions alone. Work was required, sustained, coordinated, and repeated over generations. Yet the archaeological record offers no evidence of coercion on a scale that would explain it through force alone. No fortified elite zones, no displays of dominance, no architecture screaming command. Instead, there is structure without hierarchy. This is where the irony deepens. Aguada Fénix demonstrates organization without obvious rulers, coordination without visible kings, and monumental achievement without the usual symbols of power. It forces us to consider a possibility that makes many historians uncomfortable. What if no one was in charge? Or at least not in the way we expect. Work still happened. People still arrived on time. Tasks were still divided. Standards were maintained. Boundaries respected. The project advanced steadily, not chaotically. This suggests leadership of a different kind. Distributed, temporary, situational. Authority that emerged from function rather than title. Someone knew when to dig. Someone knew where to place earth. Someone understood alignment, timing, and sequence. But no one seems to have claimed ownership of the whole. This model does not leave behind statues. It does not carve names into stone. It does not produce monuments to individual ambition. It produces something quieter, and in some ways more unsettling. It produces results. There is a faint, dry humor in recognizing this. The largest construction in the early Maya region appears to have been built without the trappings we associate with power. No thrones, no crowns, just an agreement, implicit or explicit, that the work mattered. They built something enormous, the evidence seems to say, without needing anyone to shout. This challenges a comfortable narrative. We like to believe that order requires command, that complexity demands control. Aguada Fénix suggests another route, shared purpose sustained, long enough to become structure. The absence of kings here is not proof of chaos. It is evidence of a different organizing principle, one where participation mattered more than obedience and contribution mattered more than recognition. It is tempting to romanticize this, to imagine a perfectly harmonious society where everyone worked willingly and happily. The reality was surely more complicated. Disagreements happened, fatigue set in, motivation fluctuated. But the system endured, not because it was flawless, but because it did not depend on a single point of failure. No king could die and halt the project. No throne could be toppled to stop the work. The structure outlasted individuals precisely because it did not elevate them. This may explain why Aguada Fénix feels so different from later monuments. It does not celebrate dominance. It does not assert superiority. It occupies space without demanding reverence. Its authority comes from completion, not command. In a landscape where neighboring cultures carved power into stone faces, Aguada Fénix chose anonymity. And in doing so, it revealed something quietly radical. Large things can be built without loud leaders. Order can emerge without crowns. Work can organize itself around time, place, and shared understanding. No kings, no thrones. Just work, repeated patiently until it reshaped the land. And perhaps that is the most unsettling idea of all. Chapter 10. When building the monument, built the society. We often tell the story of civilization as if it moves in one clear direction. First comes society, then comes organization, and finally, monuments rise. Solid proof that everything before them must already have been in place. Aguada Fénix suggests something less orderly, something more circular, something quietly unsettling. Here, the monument does not appear at the end of the story. It appears near the beginning. And instead of reflecting a fully formed society, it seems to have produced one. At first there were people, not a civilization in the formal sense, not a unified identity, not a named culture with borders and titles, just groups, arriving from different places, following seasons, sharing time, responding to the land. Then came a task. The task required coordination. Coordination required timing. Timing required agreement. Slowly, almost without announcement, organization emerged, not because anyone declared it necessary, but because the work demanded it. You cannot move Earth on that scale without deciding who does what, when, and where. You cannot align structures with the sun without shared attention. You cannot return year after year without recognizing patterns. The act of building forced structure into existence. Roles formed, routines stabilized, expectations became predictable. Not because a society had matured enough to build, but because building itself matured the society. This reverses a deeply comfortable assumption. We like to imagine that people must first agree on who they are before they can work together at scale. Aguada Fénix suggests the opposite. Cooperation may come first. Identity may follow. People did not need to call themselves Maya to show up. They did not need a shared name to share effort. They did not need civilization to begin acting civilized. The monument did not symbolize unity. It practiced it. Over time, repeated cooperation leaves traces, not only in the land but in behavior. People learn how to anticipate one another. They learn how to arrive on time. They learn how to contribute without needing constant instruction. These are social skills, quietly acquired, rarely celebrated. But they matter. Once learned, they do not disappear when the work pauses. They travel. People carry them back to their home regions. They reuse them in other contexts. They apply them to new problems. What began as a construction project becomes a social template. This is how building becomes society. And society, once stabilized, becomes civilization. Not through proclamation, but through habit. It is tempting to search for a moment when the Maya began, as if identity arrives all at once fully formed. Aguada Fénix resists that kind of storytelling. It offers no clear starting line. Instead, it presents a process. Participation before identity, coordination before culture, practice before label. The people who built the platform may not have thought of themselves as founders of anything. They were simply responding to a need, to gather, to align time, to create a place that made cooperation possible. But in doing so, they rehearsed the behaviors that would later define a civilization. They learned how to work together without coercion. They learned how to organize across distance. They learned how to trust a shared rhythm. These lessons do not require monuments to survive, but monuments make them visible. And yet, even here, visibility was not the goal. The platform does not declare, "We are a civilization now." It does not carve its achievement into stone. It lies quietly, broad, and patient, allowing interpretation only much later. That restraint is important. It suggests that becoming a civilization was not an ambition. It was a side effect. Not because they were Maya did they build, the evidence whispers. Perhaps because they built, they became Maya. The order matters. Building did not express identity, it generated it. And that may be the most unsettling implication of all. Civilization, in this view, is not something people decide to create. It is something that happens when people keep showing up for the same work, in the same place, long enough to change how they relate to one another. No declarations, no founding myths, just structure emerging from repetition. Aguada Fénix stands as a reminder that societies are sometimes built not by ideas, but by projects, and that the quiet discipline of shared effort can shape humanity long before it ever learns to name itself. Chapter 11, The Quiet Ending. In the end, Aguada Fénix does not argue for its importance. It does not demand attention. It does not try to explain itself. It simply remains. The rituals ended long ago. The gatherings stopped. The seasonal arrivals thinned, then disappeared entirely. The rhythms that once drew people together loosened their hold, and the place returned to something resembling stillness. Not ruin, not collapse, just absence. No voices, no footsteps, no hands lifting soil anymore. What remains is shape, a broad, patient form resting against the land, so calm that it can be mistaken for nothing at all. The platform does not announce loss. It does not mourn its own quiet. It allows time to move on, without protest. This is not the dramatic ending we usually expect from ancient stories. There are no flames, no final battles, no last inscriptions carved in haste. Aguada Fénix does not end with destruction. It ends with disuse. And that somehow feels more unsettling, because disuse implies completion. It suggests that whatever needed to happen here had already happened. The place did its work, taught its lessons, shaped its people, and then stepped aside. Civilizations often imagine themselves as permanent. They build upward, carve deeper, speak louder, hoping to fix their presence in time. Aguada Fénix chose another path. It blended back into the landscape, confident enough not to insist on remembrance. The forest moved in. Soil softened edges. Human attention drifted elsewhere. Life continued, just not here. And yet, the shape did not vanish. That may be the most important detail of all. The platform remained because it had been built carefully, patiently, without haste. It endured not through grandeur, but through restraint. The same qualities that allowed people to work together without kings or thrones allowed the structure to age without collapsing into spectacle. In its quiet persistence, Aguada Fénix offers a different lesson about endings. Not all endings are failures. Not all silence is loss. Sometimes silence is simply what follows completion. The people who built this place did not leave behind a dynasty. They did not leave behind a ruling class or a permanent capital. What they left was subtler, a method, a memory of how to cooperate, a way of organizing effort that could travel elsewhere and take new forms. Those things do not stay in one place. They move. So when the last gathering ended and the ground settled into stillness, the story did not stop. It just changed location. The habits learned here, timing, coordination, shared labor, continued to circulate, shaping communities that no longer needed this particular platform. Aguada Fénix became unnecessary. And that is a quiet success. There are civilizations that begin with kings and end with ruins, and then there are those that begin without rulers at all, forming slowly through shared effort and ending not with collapse, but with dispersal. This place belongs to the second kind. It did not begin with crowns. It did not end with fire. It began with people lifting soil together season after season, trusting that the work mattered even if its meaning was not fully clear. When the work was done, they left. What remained was not a message, but a form, broad, silent, and indifferent to recognition. A reminder that some of the most enduring human achievements are not those that demand to be remembered, but those that quietly shape the world and then let go. And perhaps that is the most fitting ending of all. One that does not close the story loudly, but allows it to fade gently back into the ground from which it first began.